Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you enjoyed our spirited debate over Remember the Titans last night. We will have part two. I'm kidding. We ain't going to talk about that anymore. Welcome to the Hammer Territory Podcast. The first big day of decisions for the Braves is in the books, and we'll break it all down. Those decisions that directly impacted the Braves today, and also decisions across baseball that could potentially play into the Braves' plans as the offseason progresses. And as always, one of the best in the business when it comes to covering the Braves and breaking it all down, my podcast partner, Stephen Tolbert, is here with us. Stephen, how are you, sir? While you give your initial thoughts of the day, I'm going to add the T to your name. Go ahead, sir.
Stephen Tolbert. Yeah. So what's up, buddy? It's good to talk to you again. It's obviously, it's been a while. It's been a whole 24 hours since we've done one of these.
Deja vu.
Deja vu all over again. But yeah, we knew this was going to be a day. I mean, we've marked this day on the calendar for the last 3 weeks, basically, ever since we kind of saw the end of the World Series coming. You can mark this day down. It's just one of those built into the schedule, guaranteed busy days in baseball. It's not like the trade deadline, arbitration deadline. This is the first day of free agency. And with that comes a lot of stuff. All the team options have to be picked up. All the player options have to be decided. All the 60-day IL guys have to be put back on the 40. So there's a ton of 40-man roster moves all over baseball. There's just a lot going on today. And so, the Braves made a number of moves. Some of them surprising, some of them not so. We're going to start with the kind of the big ones, the ones that were, really affecting the 26-man roster, which we had a couple, and then we'll work our way down to the smaller ones. But yeah, we knew, we've known for a while this was going to be a busy day. We planned to do this show tonight, weeks ago. We knew this was coming.
Yeah, so let's get it going in order. We'll talk about the club option decisions. That's the major news of the day. The roster moves, the removal of players from the roster, and a couple of notable waiver transactions as well. We'll get into all that in the first segment. But of course, the Braves came into this offseason with 5 options, 4 club options they were going to have to decide on, 1 player option with Ha-Seong Kim, and of course 1 given when it came to David Fletcher, who of course his option was declined on Monday. Ha-Seong Kim on Monday declined his player option. That was kind of expected. Braves picked up Ozzie Albies and Chris Sale's options earlier this week. Those were givens. So we go into today. We talked about it yesterday. We go into today kind of thinking that, okay, the Braves were likely going to pick up the option for Tyler Kinley as well as Pierce Johnson. But that was not to be the case. The $7 million option for Pierce Johnson, the $5.5 million option for Tyler Kinley, both declined today. And the first thing that comes to mind, Stephen, when I see that is pause. And the reason that I say that is because we saw this exact same thing a year ago. Some surprising decisions when it comes to declining options for players that you kind of assumed would make sense to keep for the next year. But that's not the case with the Braves. You certainly hope that it's free enough money to maybe reallocate to more talented sources. But after last offseason, you're also like, okay, when we talk of deja vu, hope we're not seeing last offseason start all over again this time around.
Yeah, so obviously today the Braves declined the option, the $7 million option on Pierce Johnson and the $5.5 million option on Tyler Kinley. And listen, we talked on this show several times about how neither one of those were locks. Scott was the first one I saw bringing up a few weeks ago, probably a couple months ago at this point, about how like $7 million for Pierce Johnson is a discussion. Like it shouldn't just be a no-brainer. And then Tyler Kinley, of course, nobody knew what they were going to do because he came over at the trade deadline. He pitched really well. Like $5 million seemed like a pretty reasonable number for him, or $5.5 million. And they just decided to go a different way. They just decided to decline it. You're 100% correct. The first thing everybody thought of is, this reminds me of Travis d'Arnaud last year, where we weren't expecting them to decline the option. They declined the option. We were thinking at the time, well, they're clearing the deck to make some more moves. We, of course, now know that they were going to cut payroll. We didn't know that then. And so everybody today kind of had the same reaction. Well, like, are they clearing the deck to reallocate this money elsewhere on the roster? Or are they pinching pennies again? And listen, I'm not going to preach at people who are a little bit gun shy right now because after how last offseason went, I get it. I get why you would be gun shy. We don't know that the Braves are going to reallocate these funds. Now, I do think they're going to have an aggressive offseason. I certainly think they're going to be more aggressive than last offseason, but I think Brad said it on Twitter today. Can't remember exactly what he said, but he basically said, you know, actions over words. Like, yes, Terry McGuirk went on and said, like, yeah, we want to be a top 5 payroll. But Alex went on last year and said they were going to raise payroll, and then payroll went down. So actions over words. Like, yeah, I want to see them reallocate these funds. The actual moves themselves of declining Pierce Johnson and Tyler Kinley in a vacuum can be explained. Like, there's a baseball reason to do that. There's a baseball reason to reallocate those funds somewhere else on the roster. 100% I can make that argument. That's why we made the argument so many times over the last few weeks about like this should be a debate. What I can't be on board with, what I will not in any way agree with, is them just pocketing the money and not having, bullpen weapons when you could have, because that's what they did last year. They lost a couple relievers. They didn't add anybody notable back. And we had Hector Neris pitching high leverage in the first game of the season. So, you know, the moves themselves are understandable, but reallocate the funds somewhere else on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk a bit more about the bullpen in a moment. And the other thing to note is this is that, even though the Braves declined, the option for Tyler Kinley and Pierce Johnson, that doesn't limit them from being able to bring those guys back on, new
Correct.
deals if it makes sense. We've seen the Braves restructure deals, not necessarily decline options, then bring guys back, but that always could be a possibility. But yes, coming off last year, it just, the Braves, and I know we're not at the tender deadline yet, but the Braves made, some pretty notable decisions. They declined Travis d'Arnaud. They didn't extend the contract to Ramon Laureano, and you saw kind of how that worked out. You just don't want to see more subtractions when there already is plenty of questions this offseason not be addressed. So those are the big moves. Those are the notable moves of the day that were a bit surprising. The other thing that we've been talking about this week is that we've been talking about the Braves clearing some 40-man roster spots, and that occurred today through outrighting several players. Steven, when it comes to some of the names that the Braves outrighted from the 40-man roster, no one really notable, but the big thing is, of course, clearing these roster spots for people off the 60-man roster and also starting to get some open roster spots for potential additions in the near future.
Yeah, and we talked about this last night. The Braves had to clear at least one 40-man spot today because they had one too many 60-day IL guys being added back than they had spots available. So they had to clear one spot. Well, they obviously cleared two spots when they declined the options for Pierce Johnson and Tyler Kinley. Both are now free agents. But the Braves didn't stop there. They also cleared an additional 5 spots. They outrighted Joel Payamps. They outrighted Austin Cox. They outrighted Carlos Rodriguez and Chucky Robinson were the guys that they outrighted. They had also outrighted Jake Fraley, but he got picked up on waivers by the Tampa Bay Rays, I think is what I saw. So he's off the roster as well. He's in a new organization now. And then the last 40-man move they made today was actually adding Michael Ciani from the Cardinals. So all told, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 or 8 40-man roster moves they made today. Their 40-man sits at 35 right now if you subtract all the guys and then add the one guy back. So they got plenty of 40-man spots available right now for whatever they want to do. Just looking up and down the 40, I kind of did a full reset tonight of what the 40 looks like. They've cleaned a lot of it up. There's really not as much dead weight as there used to be. Obviously, all the 60 IL guys are back on it. So they're in a good spot right now on the 40. They've got spots available. They've got a couple more spots they can clear if they need. But yeah, it was a busy day, and they were obviously gearing up to start their offseason. There's going to have to be guys that are added to the 40 if they want to protect them for the Rule 5 draft. And obviously, you add guys to the 40 anytime you sign a free agent or make a trade. So, but the Braves have done that. They've got spots open. They got money available. They've kind of set the deck, set the table for what hopefully is a busy offseason.
Yeah, and with Siani, don't want to spend too much time because it's more than likely he's roster spot basically seat warmer. We've
Yeah.
seen Alex Anthopoulos do this a few times early in the offseason. He'll claim a guy on a roster spot, and the Braves are one of 3 or 4 teams that guy goes through in the offseason. Siani is a tremendous fielder, tremendous base runner, but he's a left-handed Nick Allen at the plate. That's the best way to describe him. So there's not much upside with him, especially with the Braves already having a Gold Glove caliber center fielder in Michael Harris. So, losing Fraley, I'm not going to be honest. I was kind of excited about the idea of maybe having someone with the upside or track record of Fraley as a 4th or 5th outfielder, but you can also probably find that guy pretty cheap in free agency as you get further into the offseason.
And
But
I'll add one more thing because Fraley was claimed and Piamps was outrighted. That reduces the number of arbitration eligible players they have from 9 to 7. So now they're down to 7. And Piamps and Fraley were 2 of the highest projected guys in terms of total money. So, I think the highest guy they have now is Alex Manoah or
yeah,
Alec Manoah at
yeah.
2.2 million. That's the highest projection they have of any of their ARB guys. So they cleared kind of the big money out of their arbitration pool as well.
Yeah.
So they opened up a lot of potential funds today. And again, to bring this first part of the show full circle, it's now how they reallocate those funds that is going to be under a very, very, very strong microscope by everybody on this podcast, by the fan base at large, because of what happened last offseason. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but we'll see what they do.
Yeah, no, and I agree completely. And there's even more reason for them to do it this offseason than previously. But of course, with the more significant moves of the day, the one aspect of the team that's really been impacted is the bullpen. In a moment, Steven and I are going to discuss that a bit further, but also with the funds that are now freed up, why Alex Anthopoulos could potentially once again do what he did so well in the past and really help bolster the Braves bullpen for 2026 and perhaps beyond. So, Stephen, of course, as we discussed, the big news of the day for the Braves is that they moved on from Tyler Kinley as well as Pierce Johnson, freeing up about $12 million in the process. Of course, they could bring those guys back, but the big story from all that is this: is that the Braves bullpen, which we know Alex Anthopoulos puts a heavy emphasis on. Right now, it's basically a skeleton crew. You've got Aaron Bummer, you've got Dylan Lee, and you've got Joe Jimenez coming back from missing a full year due to a knee injury. Those are really your only reliable guys that you've got in the bullpen. Now, you've got some intriguing options, some intriguing options with very limited experience, like John Colors Laura, Daysbel Hernandez, others. That's fine. But this bullpen needs a lot more reliability. Now, with that being said, with these funds being allocated, as we start to look around baseball at moves that were done today, another move I don't necessarily know if surprising, but certainly intriguing, is that the Rays declined an $11 million option on Peter Fairbanks. So you now have Peter Fairbanks, Devin Williams, Raisel Iglesias, as well as Edwin Diaz and Roger Suarez, all pretty accomplished to high-level closers that are out there in free agency. Stephen, I know that it may be a bit surprising that we moved on from Kinley and Pierce Johnson, but the Braves do now have some significant money. They potentially can go out in free agency and get some quality arms.
Yeah. And listen, the amount of money that you allocate to your bullpen is always a fascinating number to me because it is a very important part of the team, but you have to be very careful with how much money you allocate there. And the Braves have been on the high end the last few years. And listen, before they declined these options on Kinley and Pierce Johnson, they had, they were going to have $12 million tied up in those 2 guys, another $10 million to Bummer, $9 million to Jimenez. That's $30 million bucks right there. And you still don't have a closer. And so it was getting high. And I think they needed to reset that. It's why I'm not overly upset about them, declining these options today, because I understand there's logic behind that. As long as you do something else with the money, of course. And, obviously Iglesias is a free agent, so his $16 million is off the payroll as well. So they have a chance to kind of rebuild this bullpen and at the same time rebuild the payroll that is associated with the bullpen. And, especially if they can clear Aaron Bummer's like $10 million. I would love if we woke up tomorrow and we saw a trade, even if it's just a salary dump, just to clear the money. And then you could really reset where Jimenez is like your only high paid guy right now. You could really be strategic in how you spent the money. I do think they're going to spend money on a closer. There's, like you just said, there's plenty of options. Peter Fairbanks would make a ton of sense, but so would just bringing back Iglesias. But then you can be a little bit more strategic in how you spend in the bullpen after that, which I think is called for. Um, so we'll see. I know Brad and Scott are going to do a full show on Sunday, really diving into some of these free agent options, contracts. A bunch of the sites came out with their projections and predictions today that Scott and Brad are going to talk about. So, but as we sit here right now, yeah, the bullpen is bare. I mean, they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of proven. They've got some young guys, but they don't have a lot proven. And even Jimenez, who is technically one of their proven guys, he missed all last year. So, and again, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Aaron Bummer got traded at some point. So there's a world where like it might just be Dylan Lee for a minute. So they've got work to do, but I do want them to be more mindful of what percentage of the payroll they're allocating to the bullpen. I just think that number's been kind of high, and I think there's a more strategic way to handle that if they can clear some of this other money.
And of course, there's a couple of wild card options on the roster as well right now. Ronaldo Lopez as well as
Yeah,
Grant Holmes. You've got Chris Sale, you've got Spencer Strider, Spencer Swellenbach, Kirsten Waldrop, and Alex Anthopoulos. I believe went on 680 the game earlier this week, and he talked about how Holmes as well as Lopez were being viewed as starters right now. So that's 6 starters going into next year. But we also know that Anthopoulos wants to add one. So I
yeah,
just I find it hard to believe that with the bullpen now having as much need as it does, Lopez and Holmes could be 2 quality pieces added to the bullpen. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I do feel that Alex is going to make a significant free agent move for one of these closers. We know that last year he had talked with Jeff Hoffman, talked to Tanner Scott. Both those guys went for pretty sizable contracts, obviously. So I
yeah,
think Alex is prepared. If it's maybe even Iglesias and another bullpen arm that we mentioned.
yeah,
I also do think that, depending on watching what we do with Lopez and Holmes, I also think that we potentially are in line for one of Alex Anthopoulos' trades where he goes out and identifies an arm that may have struggled in the recent past in a location, but that he really likes someone that's, got some good breaking ball stuff, what have you, like he found in Pierce Johnson, like he found in Kinley. I think that you're going to see multiple 2 to 3 moves to add to this bullpen. It may be internal with Holmes and Lopez, but I think you're going to see a significant signing and a notable trade, and that's kind of going to be the way they're going to go into a lot of different buckets to fill this bullpen up as the offseason progresses.
yeah. No, I would not be surprised at all if like Ronaldo Lopez is like the eighth inning guy next year. Um, he was a really damn. I mean, he was a fantastic reliever. Threw like 101 as a reliever. It would not surprise me at all if that happened. If and then maybe he moved to the closer spot. If they do a 1 year deal on a closer for the last year of his contract, any of that stuff, like that's how they should use the flexibility they have on the roster with Holmes and Lopez. They should use that to their advantage by adding another starter and using the fact that these other guys can pitch out of the bullpen to build depth on the roster. And that's what they need. As hard a time as they have keeping pitchers healthy, they need one way to combat that is more depth. Like the Dodgers didn't keep any pitchers healthy last year, but they had so much damn depth, it didn't matter. And they were able to rest them all until October, and then they were all healthy in October. So like you build enough depth, you're not just ultra dependent on keeping everybody healthy for 6 months. And I think that's something the Braves really need to look into. And one way to do it is use the flexibility you already have on your roster by having guys who can pitch out of the bullpen. I mean, Tyler Glasnow pitched out of the bullpen in October. Like, let's use this flexibility to our advantage to build some depth to protect against, crippling injuries.
Some names also that could be out there to watch is, going back through Jeremy Hefner's time with the Mets and seeing all the different names that he managed in the bullpen. Perhaps there's a name out there that he likes that he would like to bring into the fold with Atlanta that he feels he can maximize their contribution. So quite a bit of different ways that the Braves can go about it. The thing, though, is to remember 2 things, in my opinion, is that Alex Anthopoulos really knows how to put together a bullpen. Signing guys, trading for guys, things like that. When I talked about him being a move on the margins, the bullpen has been one of the clearest ways that he's found so much success doing that. And the second thing is that the Braves at their best have a dominant bullpen. So you know that Alex Anthopoulos wants that to once again be a calling card of this Braves roster. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes about reconstructing the bullpen. But we talk
Yeah.
about how the bullpen needs to be a focus. There are many, though, who do think that one of the right moves for the Braves this offseason is really going to land a big fish. But when it comes to the best free agents out there, one thing that you have to keep in mind, are they tied to a qualifying offer? We found out exactly who in this offseason is going to have a qualifying offer tied to them. Could any of these guys make sense for the Braves? We'll discuss that in just a moment. So, Stephen, we talked about how it's a big decision day for every team across baseball, deciding on club options, getting a 60-man roster spot or freeing up roster spots for guys on the 60-day IL, but also qualifying offers, teams adding draft pick compensation to the top free agents. So if they sign elsewhere, the teams that they came from don't go empty-handed. And so 13 players were given qualifying offers, and they were some of the biggest names that you would think. The 13 players are Kyle Tucker, Kyle Schwarber, Bo Bichette, Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, Edwin Diaz, Zach Gallen, Shota Amanga, Michael King, Trent Grisham, Gleyber Torres, as well as Brandon Woodruff. Remind me when it comes to one of us reading off a list of names to go to you next time, Stephen. But the point that I'm getting at is that I do feel that if the Braves are going shopping with a dream that they want to turn into a reality, a few of those names, Dylan Cease, Michael King perhaps, make sense. What are your thoughts? Do you feel that any of these names that you feel would have been big fish for the Braves to go after, do you kind of get turned away now from going after them with this draft pick compensation, Stephen?
Yeah. So if you don't know, the qualifying offer is effectively a 1-year deal. And the way they calculate the money is based on like the top 100 earners in baseball and a percentage. And this year it's $22 million. It's a 1-year, $22 million contract. If the player is offered a qualifying offer and accepts it, he's essentially accepting a 1-year, $22 million deal. And some of these players will accept it because the crappy thing about these qualifying offers is that now they have draft pick compensation tied to their signing, which means that the team that signs them not only has to give them a free agent contract, and usually a pretty large free agent contract, they have to give up draft picks as well, which of course is just the absolute dumbest system ever contrived. I just the dumbest system in the world. This needs to go away by the next CBA. But unfortunately, it's still here. So if you want to sign one of the best free agents in baseball, you got to give up draft picks to do it. And for some of these guys, like the Kyle Tuckers of the world, and probably even like the Dylan Cease and Ranger Suarez, it's probably not going to affect their market too much. Usually at the very top of the market, it doesn't affect guys. Bo Bichette probably isn't going to be overly affected by this. It's the guys that are like on the fringe, like Brandon Woodruff got a qualifying offer. That's going to just destroy his market. Like, people are not going to want to give up a draft pick to sign Brandon Woodruff. No disrespect to him. He's just not the same level of pitcher he was a few years ago. Gleyber Torres, that's a killer for him. I mean, he's just going to get a lot less money than he would have otherwise. A lot of times what these guys will do is either A, they'll accept the qualifying offer and just do a 1-year deal with that team and go back on the free agent market next year free from that because you can only be given the qualifying offer one time in your career, or they will accept a 1-year deal somewhere else for the same purpose. And so we'll see what happens. I'm guessing, I think it was, 13 guys total. I'm guessing like 2 or 3 will end up accepting, and then the top line guys won't. From the Braves' point of view, I think Dylan Cease and Ranger Suarez are probably the 2 closest, I would say, that are clearly worth it. I don't think they're going to be on Kyle Tucker, even though I could make the argument they should be. I don't think they're going to be on Bo Bichette, even though I could make an argument that they should be. But I think Suarez and Dylan Cease, and maybe even Michael King, the pitcher, I mean, obviously the starting pitching is probably where I could see the best argument for justifying it. I don't know. I'm curious what you think. If any of these guys are just clearly worth giving up the money and the pick for, that are a big enough need for the Braves. I'm not. I could probably be talked in and out of a number of these guys.
Ask me in 5 days, because this leads to what's going to occur on November 10th, which is this coming up Monday. That's the announcement of the NL Rookie of the Year. And as we know,
Yeah,
that will be when Drake Baldwin, it's announced whether or not he is NL Rookie of the Year. And then if he is, the Braves give up a draft pick. But as we discussed previously, I believe, again, it's really hard to guarantee, but I believe that if the Braves were to sign one of these free agents, one of
yeah,
these free agents with qualifying offers, the draft pick they would lose would be the one that they gained from Drake Baldwin winning Rookie of the Year. But
yeah,
they may have incentive to do that now, because it's basically an extra pick for them to play with. And that's what I'm kind of getting at in a grand scale here, is that, we just talked about the bullpen. There being multiple moves that are needed there. Re-signing Ha-Seong Kim, maybe adding another bat of some sort. But Alex Anthopoulos, it really seems as if he's going to land a big fish, it's going to be a pitcher of some sort. Getting that extra pick with Drake Baldwin is what really plays into the increased likelihood that the Braves will feel comfortable going after that big fish, either trading away extra prospect capital for that level of a pitcher, or being willing to give up that extra pick to go sign that level of a pitcher. So that's why I think it's so important to watch out for Monday. And if Drake Baldwin does win NL Rookie of the Year, I think there's just as much chance, maybe even more, that the Braves don't even use that pick to draft a player, but they use it as extra ammunition to go out and get a quality win now contributor to add to this roster.
yeah. And we've seen the Braves sign qualifying free agents before. It's not necessarily a deal breaker for them. I remember this was 2021, the year they signed Will Smith. He was I think the number one reliever on the market that year. Anyway, he'd gotten a qualifying offer from the Giants. I don't know why I remember this, but he got a qualifying offer from the Giants. Well, the day he was supposed to decide whether or not he was going to accept or not, his agent actually used the threat of him signing and accepting the qualifying offer as a bargaining chip to get somebody to give him a 3-year deal. And the Braves gave him the 3-year deal, and the Braves just paid the draft pick penalty to do it. So,
I
like,
think
it's,
they signed both Ozuna and Will Smith with the qualifying offer that
yeah,
2020 before that 2020 season, because I
yeah.
think that Ozuna had been offered by the Cardinals and he declined. That's why the Braves wouldn't have offered him a qualifying offer this offseason.
I think, yeah, I don't remember that part. I definitely remember the part about Will Smith because I remember reading about how his agent used the deadline as leverage because the Braves signed him on the day that they were supposed to accept the qualifying offer. So yeah, like the Braves, they'll do it if they feel like it's worth it. And so it's not. And again, it's relative to the player and the talent that you're getting. When you're talking about one of these marginal guys that's like right on the edge, it's really tough for them. It really kills their market. Nick Pivetta last year just got wrecked by this thing. Happens every year. There's a guy or two that just get absolutely wrecked by the qualifying offer. But again, if the guy's good enough, and like you said, they have an extra draft pick to play with anyway. If Drake Baldwin wins the Rookie of the Year, I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to exclude them from being in any of these guys' markets. I don't think it's that detrimental. I think they would do it for the right guy, and I think there are more than a few on the list that I would qualify as the right guy.
Agreed completely. And so, and again, it'll be interesting to see what occurs. So, a lot happening for the Braves and around baseball today. And the best way to enjoy a full course meal, Steven, is to first set the table. And that's what the Braves did today. They made sure that when it came to their roster, it's set for them to take the best advantage that they can to add the quality pieces to really be able to contend going into 2026. Hey, at least my analogy this time didn't include Lord of the Rings. That'll come up here in the near future again. So, as we go through these shows, as we go through this early off season, I think it's really important to continue setting the stage. What's the next really important date? That's this upcoming Monday. It's the start of
Yeah,
awards week. It's us. It's us hopefully seeing Drake Baldwin earn what he rightfully deserves, which is Rookie of the Year, and the Braves getting that extra draft pick to potentially play with. Before that, Scott and Brad will be back with you on Sunday talking about some free agent predictions. What could make sense as we're seeing many different outlets give ideas of what free agents could be earning this offseason. Steven, anything else from you as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast?
No, I'll add, like, I think the qualifying offer decisions come in like 10 days. I think they
November
typically
18th. November 18th.
November 18th. Okay, so they give them 12 days this year. So again, that can be a big day as well. That could be a day where there's a lot of movement because again, teams and players can use that day as a negotiating tactic. And we'll also learn exactly who's going to accept, who's going to still be on the market. But yeah, now that we're into the offseason and free agents can sign with any team. Of course, this is baseball, so absolutely nothing happens. In basketball, as soon as free agency starts, there's like 50 signings.
Yes.
Same in the NFL. And baseball, free agency starts and it's just a wet fart noise, just nothing for weeks. So, this is Scott. This is where Scott gets so mad, and I'm with him. It pisses me off to no end. But we're just gonna, it's kind of hurry up and wait. It's like the offseason has started and everybody, chill out for 2 weeks until something happens. So, but technically anything can happen at any point now. Anybody can sign with anybody. The Braves can sign any free agent they want at any time. And at least now we know that's a possibility. And, an emergency podcast can literally happen at any moment. So that's at least better than before where we knew nothing could happen.
Yeah.
So free agency has started. We will be here to cover it all. Of course, every roster move, every payroll ad, anything of significance, oftentimes things of zero significance, which we talk a lot about on this show. We're here to cover it all.
Absolutely. And again, the big thing about it is that as soon as news breaks, we're going to be here with you discussing it all. You can find Stephen Tolbert at B_outliers. Just ignore the opinions when it comes to movies. Stick with his opinions when it comes to baseball. Of course, you can find me at StatsSAC on Twitter /X. Hammer Territory across all forms of social media. Part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.